Northern Illinois did what yesterday, Jesse? They went to South Bend and they won 16-14. Well, what do we make of this? That's not supposed to happen. This got a 2 Chalai out of 5 rating. Not exactly the most thrilling encounter in the history of organized athletics, but this is one of the worst losses I can remember. I watched this one on the flight home last night. In totality, one of the worst losses that I can remember. Just all things considered, this is an AP poll top 5 team. We didn't have them that high, but even I had them top 10. And they just can't handle it. I guess Notre Dame just can't handle it. This is not a good stat I'm about to read to you. This is their 4th loss to an unranked team under Marcus Freeman, and he hadn't been there that long. They were 42-0, by the way, in that category from 2017 to 2021. It is the biggest underdog to beat Notre Dame in 30 years. We went back to the mid-90s. Who was it, Jesse? I can't even remember who it was in the mid-90s. Anyway, that's a long time ago. I'll tell you exactly what this looked like to me. So I knew the outcome before I watched the game. And I'll tell you what it looked like to me. It looked like they had prepped for a 1-game season. When you watched them against A&M last week, it's not just that they won. It's that they looked physically superior. Like they looked more well-conditioned. They had a step on A&M, it felt like, for most of the evening. They looked like they were playing at as high a level as you would hope a program like Notre Dame plays at. But the thing about it is, you expect that's just going to be a consistent performance. And then you watch them yesterday. I watched them yesterday, and it looked just like me trying to play softball if I did legs that morning. I can still play, but it's not ideal to be doing that in the morning and then trying to go play a doubleheader out in Smyrna on Friday night. You are going to be dead-legged. I don't know what in the world they did this week. I have no idea. But man, they look slow. Just lethargic. It's like someone knocked on their collective door and said, hey, we got a game in 20 minutes. And they said, we didn't know we were playing today. That is an indictment. That's an indictment on leadership. That's an indictment on the head coach of that program. There's no other way to put that. Northern Illinois outgained them 388 to 286, which is the other part of this. Normally when you see one of these upsets, especially one where we had, a 30-point favorite, a 28, 30-point favorite, something like that. Normally when that happens, it's crazy, but you go look at the box score and someone, like with Auburn yesterday, Auburn was like, they turned the ball over 5 times. So you look at it and say, well, this is inexcusable, but at least I get it. At least this stat explains it to me. Northern Illinois just flat out outgained them. There was a lot of talk last week because I came on the show and I said Notre Dame had no elite parts on their team. And I meant to say offense, but I said team. Then I corrected it, and everyone heard the mistake. No one heard the correction. But they have no elite parts on their offense. Riley Leonard's, as it turns out, a very average quarterback, to the point where I think some Notre Dame fans are rightly asking, should we make a move at quarterback? And then there's the follow-up of, well, you can't have that sunk cost in NIL. Well, yeah, you can. You're ultimately paying to win football games. You're not paying to appease someone. Like, it only makes sense to stick with that person if they're putting you in the best situation to win football games. I don't know that Notre Dame has a better option. Obviously, the coaching staff doesn't feel that way. But their final 4 drives, talk about a lack of a killer instinct. Their final 4 drives, 3 and out, interception, blocked field goal. Bama was on the ropes last night against USF, but you'd never know it looking at the final score because when it came time to have that closer mentality, killer instinct, they found a way to pull away. That's what top-end teams are supposed to do. You're not supposed to be struggling with that competition, but even if you do, you're supposed to be able to window dress late. Not only could Notre Dame not do that, they couldn't even take the lead. They just end up losing the game outright. You can't wish good quarterback play into reality, was all I kept thinking when I was watching this. There were so many high hopes that somehow Riley Leonard would come in and be 150% to 200% of the passer that he has been. And that's not how this works. Jaden Daniels transferred to LSU, ended up winning the Heisman. That is a needle in a haystack's example of how this transfer portal stuff really works. That's not to mean don't use it, but if you go get a guy who hasn't been something and you're expecting him to turn into that thing, that's where you're going to get heartbroken every single time. Riley Leonard is obviously very limited as a passer, and it was a letdown spot. I mean, I can understand if they're favored by 4 touchdowns and they can't even score 28, but the final score is like 24-7 or something like that. That's what a letdown spot looks like in college football. But when you have that, and you also coincide that with Riley Leonard's first multiple interception game of his career, well, that's a recipe for disaster because Notre Dame has no wiggle room. That's the point I was making last week. This is a very low margin for error team. I thought they were properly rated in the top 10. That's where I had them. I think we had them number 8. But I said, in that ratings release, I said, this is not USC. This is not Texas. This is not Alabama. This is not a team that can mess around for 3 quarters but has the explosive playmaking ability to just hang 21, just really quick. That's not them. Even against supposedly inferior teams, I mentioned Northern Illinois, Purdue, Miami of Ohio, they have to bring it because they have a much lower margin for error. Marcus Freeman, after this game, said, we've been here before. That's the problem, actually. I know he kind of said it in passing, but he said, well, we got to figure it out. We've been here before. They've got 3 home losses as a 2+ touchdown favorite under him. That's just failed preparation. That's all that is. Doesn't mean Marcus Freeman will never get it figured out. That's a very young head coach still. He was the guy named in 2021 despite never having been a head coach, and he gets the job at Notre Dame. And remember, everyone was on board with it, so I'm not saying Notre Dame folks are piling on him right now. They're criticizing him, which is totally fair. I'm not saying they're hitting the dump button on him or anything like that, but there's no shortcut to learning how to do this thing. There's no shortcut to it. My question is, does he know why? He can say what he wants to at press conferences. He can say what he wants to in any kind of post-game setting or any kind of public setting. But when he looked at this game, does he know the why? Or is he thoroughly confused as to why it turned out this way? There's a big difference in those two things for me, because if you know the why, you can go about addressing it. But if you're talking about, we got to go figure out what happened here, not a good thing. Head coaches are supposed to have answers. You get paid what you get paid to have answers. You don't get paid to ask questions. You don't get paid to be confused. You are the guy who's supposed to have the answer because you're supposed to know your team and know your program better than anyone because it's yours. It's literally yours. It has your thumbprint on it, especially 3 or 4 years in, and you're supposed to have answers. It's always going to go wrong. The stuff's going wrong for Kirby Smart. He's going to have an answer for it. I can promise you, not to compare the two because it's kind of unfair, but I'm going to because that's the standard you'll be held to at Notre Dame. There are going to be very few situations that arise at Georgia, for example, where Kirby says, I ain't got a clue. I guess we'll just have to go figure it out. And he's being honest. Now, he may be lying to you when he says that. So I don't know either way. I'm asking, does Marcus Freeman know? Are there a couple of things he can point to and say, this right here messed us up. We got to get this fixed. And I'm not even talking about game day execution. He said preparation. So what is it you did on Tuesday or Wednesday? Or what is it you did in the summer or spring that you would change? He doesn't owe me the answer. He owes his team an answer, though. And I'd say he owes the fan base an answer. I've always believed in being accountable to the folks that give you the opportunity to have the job you have.